We're back here on this special program as we talk about education in our country in preparation for the new school year. And we are pleased to have with us today the Minister of Education, the Honorable Jeffrey Lloyd, Mr. Julian V. Anderson, the Deputy Director of Technology and Innovation, and Mr. Donovan Turnquest, the Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education. And we have many miles to go. Minister, you sought to inspire students as well as teachers in a ceremony the other day. And teachers have informed us that they too need to be further encouraged and properly remunerated. The motivation of teachers is extremely important in our system if teachers are going to have the kind of results that you need. Isn't that right?
If there's one single factor, and there isn't, Mr. Jones, so let's be clear. If there is one, there isn't, Mr. Jones, so let's be clear. But across the world, across the studies, from time immemorial, there's one single contributing factor to the success of students. Teachers. It's the quality of teachers and teaching. One. So your emphasis must be on those teachers, whose emphasis is this on the student, student-centric. You must commit your resources, your attention, your time to your teachers, your education professionals. These are the ones who execute the program, the vision. That's why one of the pillars of our objective is professional development. Mabel Walker Institute is going to come on stream this year. We're not going to wait for it. After this administrative conclave, throughout the school year, we are going to be having professional development for our administrators and our teachers. And I'm happy that we are going to hopefully engage a former director of education who is going to assist us in this process. He's very equipped in our estimation, very, very qualified to roll out this professional development program. Like I say, the Mabel Walker Institute is going to be, as it were, the physical structure where this will happen. But educational professionals, you've got to support. We've got to increase the ability for them to do in-service training. We've got to increase the ability for them to be supported, financially supported, by going back to school. We've got some relationships with universities like Barry University where they can go online and do their master's degrees. We've got to increase their ability to access funding, tuition funding, by way of scholarships. Some choose to go through in-service when we can afford it. Some would like to have the support of tuition assistance by remaining at home, and others would like to have that tuition assistance by taking a leave of absence and traveling with their families to another country. We've got to do it. That is the commitment of our government, and we are going to see to it. Don't forget what I said earlier, Mr. Jones. You're only spending 12% of your budget on education, when the recommendation is a minimum of 17%, ideally 20%. It's going to take us a while to get there, but a large portion of that is your professional development. Because Godfrey and I and you went to school, we were outside under the tree. Maybe we didn't have desks to sit at, much less a blackboard and so on. But what we did have is a dedicated and a committed teacher to no matter what happened, we were going to succeed. I can't forget Ms. Judith Thompson, Ms. Pratt, Ms. Brister, Ms. Coakley, Mr. Dawson Conliffe, Mr. Donald Davis. These are people who went beyond the call of duty. They didn't have the accoutrements that these students got today with air-conditioned classrooms, tablets in the hands, laptops in the hands of the teachers. They were just dedicated and committed. They were committed to their craft. They were committed to their own development, and they were committed to ensuring that you succeeded.
Mr. Lloyd, one of the things that Randall and I have discussed on our programs is the fact that people are being educated out of their environment. He went down to the school in Crooked Island, the high school. Excellent facility. But the students in Crooked Island are being provided with an education that equips them for a job in Nassau. And I believe that one of the things which should happen is that people should be taught how to exist in their environment. how to create employment opportunities in the environment. If not, we're going to run the risk, sir, of having all our Southeastern islands, young people, pretty much now you have a situation where you got either two kinds of people, the very young and the very old, very few people in between, because there are no economic opportunities. They're urban-centered oriented.
That's why, Mr. Enius, and let Mr. Turnquist speak to this, because he was formerly vice principal at Ellen Coakley and here in New Providence, and he was responsible for curriculum. This is why I say one of the pillars of our objectives is curriculum development. And you remember the term that I use, it has to be relevant. It has to be relevant to the 21st century aspirations demand. You need to meet the student in Spanish Wells where the student in Spanish Wells is.
Right.
Mr. Jones, that is a marine-minded individual.
Exactly.
That's a marine, biologically minded individual. What's the point of you teaching that young man about history for all intents and purposes, while of course it is necessary as a rounded education for him to know about history, and he should be encouraged to know about history, but what he wants to know is how to fish, how to fix boats, Mr. George. And the thing about it is he could point to generations of his families that have been successful at it.
Right.
Mr. Turnquist?
Mr. Jones, Mensa and I have spoken about this. I'm a big proponent of technical vocational education. And Mr. Ennis spoke a few minutes ago, you did, mention something about having a master's degree and a BS degree. To me, a degree is only a foundation on which to build. Someone who comes with a college degree doesn't really know how to do anything, but he has a foundation, but it tells you that he's capable of being trained to do something. Like I said, I'm a proponent of technical vocational high schools. At the moment, we have technical vocational subjects that are offered in our high schools, but not to the extent where they're certified. Now, we established a few minutes ago that only 50% of our students graduate. The other 50% leave with a piece of paper that says, I attended school for 12 years. But they also leave with no skills, no marketable skills. So you have to understand that out of our entire graduating student population, only 10 or 15% will go on to tertiary education. The other 85% are looking for a job. But we are not providing them with the skills that are necessary to obtain that job. So I think we have to invest more money and more time into technical vocational education. Minister hasn't quite bought into my concept yet, but I feel that we need to have technical vocational schools established in the east, the west, and the south.
Well, I bought into it, it's just that the money ain't there yet.
One. Because, I mean, let's be honest. A kid leaving school, he wants a job.
That's right.
But when he goes to an employer, they ask, what can you do?
That's right.
Well, I have 4 BJCs.
Yeah.
But what can you do? See, that's my thing. And I think that we have a captive audience in high school from 10 to 12th grade. I think that you can train a kid to be a carpenter, a mason, an ace carpenter, ace plumber in 3 years. Kids go to BDVI after they leave high school to learn the same thing, mind you. They go there 1 year. We had them for 3 years. And they must come to school for those 3 years, according to the Education Act. So we have them captive. So that's the time to prepare them for the workforce.
I want to go back to something that the minister said about teaching, teachers and teaching. And you are spending $298 million in education in a fiscal year. What is being done to incentivize teachers other than the Mabel Walker Institute?
Before you go there, the bulk of that money is on salary.
Salaries, they can say.
And so you really have pittance to do anything elsewhere. And so that's the shortfall there. When you're going to spend about 3/4 of the monies that you get on salaries, it leaves you very little to do otherwise. And as Minister indicated, he bought into the technical vocational schools, but we don't have the finances.
And see, Mr. Jones, as Mr. Anderson says, 75 approximately % of your budget goes to salary and emoluments, personal emoluments. And I'll tell you, I'm a proponent of paying teachers far more and better than they are presently paid. I'll give you an example. And Mr. Anderson can verify this. Mr. Anderson was a high school principal at R.M. Bailey High School. Mr. Anderson barely made $4,000 a month.
That is true.
Master's degree, 30 years experience, and dealing with a school system, and having to manage a budget, arguably in the millions of dollars, with 800 children, 120 staff members. Now you put Mr. Anderson or another principal in an enterprise of that size, and he's making very comfortable six figures.
Yeah.
Very comfortable. Now, the Bahamian people have got to decide whether education is important, and I'm happy when I spoke last night at the Bursary Scholarships Award for the University of the Bahamas to see the number of parents out there and cheering on their students. 546 of the university students are going to be receiving, how committed and how understanding they are about education. But that cannot happen, and it cannot happen successfully and effectively, Mr. Jones, without a teacher, without administrators. And you cannot expect males to choose education coming out of coming out of college with a bachelor's degree, master's degree, and a teaching certificate and starting at $2,000 a month. It's not going to happen, sir. Not when you've got accountants, engineers, pilots, or any other number of professions that are far more attractive and satisfying and rewarding.
Teaching is a vocation, though.
Yeah, but
Teaching is a ministry.
All vocations are vocations. I don't want people to come with that old vocation. Everything you are called to do, Mr. Jones, you're an outstanding media personality, executive, and so on. This is what God has called you to be. You are in a vocation of your calling and your choosing. You are put here. You could have been a mason, a carpenter, you could have been out there a bricklayer, you could have been a fisherman, you could have gone on in accounting, you're an excellent artist, you could have chosen any one of those fields, but this is where God has placed you for this time. And because of your passion, you do it joyfully, you do it satisfactorily, but still, you got children to educate, you gotta want to live in a decent home, you yourself want to have a certain quality of life. It's a struggle in an environment like ours where, you know what the expense is to live in the Bahamas. For us to come out with a master's degree, teacher certificate, got $2,500, $2,000 or $25,000 a year starting salary, and Mr. Jones, and that's $2,000. By the time you get to $4,000, if you ever get there, you've already spent 30 years in the system.
Let me give us a picture to think about, and I commend the armed forces for the job that they do. But they spend approximately 6 months in training. A teacher has to go to school 4 years, spend thousands of dollars to get that degree, and the salaries are almost similar. Starting salaries for teachers and a starting salary in our armed forces.
Gentlemen, we also live in a country where, for many years, formal education wasn't valued.
Still today, to a large extent.
Formal education wasn't valued, right? You could leave high school, I had plenty of friends who did it, and went and work in a hotel, and make all kind of tips, or become a taxi driver, right? It's the
Mindset.
the attitude towards education changing in the country. The value of our people valuing an education. And Mr. Tenquez, you mentioned the fact that not just in education, but valuing the importance of skills.
Right.
Skills.
And are the people invested in education? We want to get to that, but make the point.
No, I think that the majority of our students, especially our male students, they would love to have the opportunity to utilize their hands. They're not given the opportunity. And sometimes I said we are failing our students because they look to us for these opportunities. We don't provide them. You can see it in the schools that offer a little bit of technical vocational education where they get exposed to it. They get excited to do auto mechanics, carpentry, they get excited. But they need to be immersed in that and leave school with some certificate, some paper, saying I'm qualified. And that is where we need to get to.
I think the question Mr. Ineas is asking is, do you see, and you have been in the classroom a lot later in your careers, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Turnquest, do you sense that the people of this country are beginning to value education and why and how it is important in their own lives and lives of their children?
I see a slow progress. It's not fast enough. But little by little, over year, you see an increase where parents are now understanding the value of education, and they realize that if their children or themselves are educated, they can change their circumstances.
We like to compare, ourselves to Finland, Mr. Jones. We
Yes.
love to compare ourselves to Finland.
Finland
We like
and
to
South
try to-
Korea.
Yeah, we like to seek to emulate Finland and so on. You can't get a job in Finland without having a master's degree. But the starting salary is among the highest
In the world.
among the highest in that country for a teacher.
Yes.
And that's why they are able to attract the best of the
teachers, yeah.
But we have to understand where we are,
we
the
only
kind of
identify.
country that we have,
We only identify.
the size of our population, the revenue base of our country. And for many countries in this region, spending $300 million in a fiscal year on education, that is a dream. That is a tremendous amount of money. The question is whether or not the country is getting value for the $298 million that you talked about.
I mean, people have to decide that, but you say it's a dream. I don't know if not necessarily so.
A dream for other countries.
Well, Jamaica is spending more, closer to 17%. Barbados is spending north of 16%. Barbados, for instance, has universal preschool education. And those students in those preschools get free breakfast and free lunch in Barbados.
The size of the population is
Well,
smaller.
it's the same size. Barbados is the same 200,000 or 300,000. They're approximately 300,000 of the Bahamian people. Same size, but their value. No, what you see in Barbados is a fastidious commitment to education. I mean, they recognize, understand how valuable education is, and has long been in Barbados. Education, of course, they have had tertiary levels of education in their country longer than we have had. All right, in terms of the University of the West Indies as being on their campus and so on. But, as we become more aware, I mean, Mr. Jones and Mr. Turnquest talked about this. I had young men out of the Yeast program, didn't have nary a BJC, nary a BGCSE, was able to go to Atlantis and wash pots and make half the salary, wash pots and make half the salary of a teacher. Wash pots. You've seen in the media, you carried it yourself, you've discussed it on your radio program a number of times. Probably never had a high school diploma in their life, could go over on Atlantis and pick up towels off the beach
Exactly.
and make $20,000 a year. When people see that, when they see that you don't have to graduate, get a taxi plate and go home at $300 a day, $1,500, $1,800 a week,
Why get
they
it?
figure, well, why do I need to be in school? What's the show me the connection between staying in school, a young man, staying in school, slaving it out, going through subjects that I probably don't like or don't want to like, finishing that school, going and getting my associate's degree, and come out and make 1/3 or 1/2 of what the fellow on the dock as a fisherman, account man is making.
Yeah, but a whole lot of people, Mr. Lloyd, are not driven by money.
Whole lot of people
a whole lot of
are.
people
Oh, yes, a lot of people
are not driven by money. They are driven by satisfying themselves that they are doing a good job. in
That
whatever-
job satisfaction,
whatever
when you go to city
profession,
market, don't
That's
ask
gone out
me
the
to
window.
do that.
Not the
Listen,
millenniums.
I
That
don't
job
do what I
satisfies.
do for money.
Oh, you?
Mr.
I don't
Jones.
do what I do for money.
No, and
you know?
I think it all depends on whom you're speaking about. But the millenniums, they're driven by money.
Yes, but shouldn't you disabuse them of that? Shouldn't we look at national development in a different way? That you're not able to pay the Minister of Education. Let's forget about teachers, the kind of money that he deserves, and given the amount of time and effort that he puts in his job. You're not able to pay a deputy permanent secretary or deputy director that kind of money, given what you do.
Right.
You're not able to pay
Agreed.
a teacher
Agreed.
the kind of money that they deserve. But we have to look at national development in another way, and we have to disabuse our people that they ought to be driven by money.
I agree with you, but the reality is they see those professions and see what they make. And as Minister said, if I could go out on the beach, don't have to put in the hard work in the years of educating myself and go there and make your salary, most of them going to choose that option.
Yes, but the teachers of Godfrey's primary school and Jeff Lloyd's primary school and my primary school, they weren't driven by money.
Different set of people.
No,
different set of people and
they
a
were not
different
driven by money.
time.
And there are a whole lot of teachers today who are not driven by money. We have teachers in our country who spend their own money painting their classrooms and buying materials for their students.
We agree. And look at the turnover that we have.
Yes.
And look at the turnover that we have in the teaching profession. Because a lot of them, they get burned out after a while continuing to do that same thing when they know that I could go out there, further my studies, get a law degree and go out there and make money. If I'm an accountant, go out there in the field and I can make more money. And they said, well, hey, I gave 5 years to humanity. I've done my job. Let me go out there and make my money now.
Why you stayed in this profession?
Because I love it.
You're helping me.
But I'm from a different breed.
Because you love it.
Mr. Jones.
Mr. Jones, if you say, give me a moment, sir. If you say that people are not necessarily driven by money, then explain to me why you cannot find nary a male teacher in the primary school. Can't find nary a male principal.
Why you stayed in the profession, you know?
Hold on. You
And
can't
there are
only find a
scores of
male
people like him.
principal in the primary school. And those teachers and those teachers that remain complain bitterly about the challenge they have, especially when the time comes for their children to be able to go off to university. I've had a number of teachers tell me that a part of their package should be that there should be some subvention for them who've been in the profession for a number of years, that when their child reaches an age of matriculation to a tertiary level, there should be a subvention provided or some consideration provided, because they're already paying a significant sacrifice by this profession and the paucity of pay.
And so I raised the question to ask you, what are you doing to incentivize teachers?
Well, I've given you my answer in that respect because of talking about the professional development and the support that we are providing for them. But I've gone on record as the Minister of Education, the government has gone on record, even before we became government, that we have to compensate our teachers better. And we've got to find ways of prioritizing the teaching profession and education in our country. And we can't just talk about it. We've got to put our money where our mouth is.
Yes.
And I'm not telling you today we're going to double the salaries of teachers. I'm not saying that by any stretch. What I am saying is we have got to take our call as a country, not just a government, but as a country. And I can remember right on your show, Mr. Jones, at Jones at Love 97. I can remember a conversation I had with the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, the father of our nation, the late Sir Lyndon Pinley, right on my program, a couple of years before he died. And he says, listen, Mr. Lloyd, the Bahamian people can have anything they want, as long as they're willing to pay for it. If we want quality education in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, if we want quality teachers, if we want males, more males in our classroom, more males in administration, the unpalatable reality, indisputable fact is we got to pay for it, Mr. Jones. And that's the decision that we got to make. We are doing all we can in the Ministry of Education to reprioritize our budget. We are slicing up this pie in such a way that those items that we consider to be less, not less essential, are getting the less focus in our budget, and those that require more attention by way of resources are getting more. We are committed to technology in our country. We are committed to professional development. We are committed to upgrading our schools according to the resources. We have got schools across this country that have been condemned years ago. L.W. Young is long past its life. Bartlett Hill Primary, long past. S.C. McPherson, long past its life. Government High School, long past. R.M. Bailey, long past its life. Today, this country needs approximately $350 to $400 million in physical upgrade and new buildings for our school system. So,
Gentlemen,
just a fact of life.
Gentlemen, education is about development. All right? I noticed, Mr. Anderson, you refer on 2 occasions to the Millennium Development Goals, and now we're in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The UN has also what is called the Human Development Index. Right. Mr. Lloyd, you familiar with that?
GI, of course.
All right. In 1997, the Human Development Index for the Bahamas was 0.8 something. All right? In 2017, sir, gentlemen, the Human Development Index for the Bahamas is 0.7. We are declining.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
yes.
We are declining. All right? How relevant are the education program or curriculum in this country to address the improvement in our human development?
Well, currently we are now looking at reforming our curriculum, as Minister said, to meet the needs of the students where they're at. And that's a rigorous process that will take place over time. But once that is done, then it's hoped that, and with a view, that we will be meeting the needs of our students.
See, we're in a global economy now, you know.
Yes, we are.
We ain't no more this regional outlook where we're trying to attract more tourists than Dominican Republic, right? We're becoming members of the WTO. We are in a global economy.
Yes.
And in the global economy, the watchword is being competitive,
Yes,
sir.
That is my
yes,
friend.
yes.
You're right,
Yes.
Godfrey. This is why we are so committed to professional development, so committed to technology. We are so committed to universal access to preschool. This is why we're going to 3-year-olds. That's why we're so committed, as Mr. Turnquist talked about, technical vocational education. Mr. Jones, there will be a $5.5 million upgrade beginning this September at the Bahamas Technical Vocational Institute. But we can't wait, Mr. Turnquist says, we can't wait until they come out of high school. This is why in BTVI, we are doing something what is called a bridge program, where they are in high school, but they're taking courses at BTVI. Something like an advanced placement that Mr. Anderson can talk a little about, which he introduced to Rara and Bailey, where students in 11th grade could take BGCSE, and in 12th grade, they could start taking college-level courses. Because as Mr. Hania said, sir, this is a global environment,
Yes.
and people need to understand this. You're talking about competing not with Barbados and
The
Trinidad
word. The
and
word.
St. Vincent
The
and
word.
St. Lucia. No, sir. You're competing now with Belarus. You're competing with Estonia.
And Singapore.
And Singapore. This is where the world now is going to get their
Yes,
technically
yes.
capable people and individuals. And the world now, and those investors don't care where you come from, what language you speak, as long as you can
do the
deliver
job, yeah.
on the job
Yeah.
that they put before you.
Talking about investment in education, it is known that in terms of parental involvement in education, that private schools see more parental involvement in education than public schools. And it is assumed because parents pay.
They pay twice.
People pay.
They pay twice.
For their children's education. That is why they attend PTA meetings.
Yes.
That is why they pick up report cards. There are thousands of report cards that are not picked up in the public school every year.
We have decreased that.
Yes. The point is, we're talking about investment in education. How are you going to get parents to invest in their children's education? Perhaps, Minister and gentlemen, that there should be some payment. You are giving tablets to 30,000 children.
Right.
Tablets for their use, they ain't taking it home.
Yes, yes. In the private schools,
They pay.
they pay. And private school education in the country, there's a higher premium on private
Yes,
education
education, yes.
in this country
Yes.
than, say, in Barbados, where people believe that the public schools work. How are you going to get parents to be better invested in their children's education?
Through the education process of parents, Mr. Jones. But also, you know, some time ago, there was talk about legislating parents' accountability. I don't think too many politicians got the stomach to do that, because remember, parents are voters, so when they start feeling that you penalize them for the behavior or the lack of proper behavior of their children, they find ways to pay you back. But there's no question that parents have got to be held accountable. I'll tell you what I found Mrs. Ward to have done when we visited Grand Bahama. She said, listen, parents who didn't come to collect their report cards, advise the children the next day that you cannot come to school until such time as your parents come to collect these report cards. Now, that put a burden on parents, because you know parents see schools somewhat as a babysitting environment, all right? But she had 100% success. I think that some principals, and Mr. Anderson and Mr. Turnquest can speak more to this as to what they did in their respective schools, but some principals found some ingenious ways of addressing that, okay, by either calling parents or utilizing the tactic of Mrs. Ward that we talked about in Grand Bahama. But there's no question that some means needs to be done, short of maybe law, or even law required, that hold parents accountable. Make parents, because don't forget, Mr. Jones, you don't see these children until, in this particular instance, 3 years old. Who has formed their attitude and mindset in those formative 3 years? Their parents. So in a sense, you are either being burdened, as it were, with their failure, or you're being, as a sense, rewarded with their commitment and their dedication to the advancement of their own children. Why should the society pay because you're lax, or you're reckless, or you're careless, or you've been absent in your responsibility?
Yes.
And if the society must pay, shouldn't there be a sanction by the society upon you?
You're right.
Now let the society also help you to understand. What is that I need you to understand about being a parent? That's why I said to help to educate the parents as well. And this is why we have some programs in our school system called parenting classes and so on.
Yes, Mr. Anderson?
What Minister talked about, and I don't know if you recall, but Minister at the time was in journalism and he came to my campus. There were two things in 2007 that parents had up in arms against the principal of R.M. Bailey, when one was the uniform code and the other one was the report cards. And that's what we did. And in the absence of law, we need to take measures like that because it's a serious indictment on the parent. How can your child go through a complete term and you as the parent not know what your child has done within that term? And so what we did was we put the children in the auditorium, ran a phone across the road, and allowed them to call their parents, publish their names. And every time their names came off, we took it off. Now, I was Ms. Ward's superintendent, and I shared that with her. And so she took up on it, and I admonished, and you got 100% report card collection.
You know, gentlemen,
You remember when Mr. Anderson locked the children out the gate because that uniform was not in compliance? He pointed to the form that they signed to say you were going to be in compliance with the uniform. The parents went down to the Ministry of Education, rattling the gate and saying, Mr. Anderson has got to go. Mind you, he's only enforcing what they signed, what they signed.
Exactly.
Of course, the Ministry of Education says, but you all signed this. They eventually relented. He never had that problem again. I was on the campus with that conversation.
but gentlemen,
The whole, Godfrey, the collection of report cards and parents' accountability must be crucial in education.
Yes.
Yes, it is, Mr. Jones, and we have used various tactics to get parents to come and collect report cards. What Ms. Ward did in Grand Bahama, we used that at C.C. Sweeting, L.W. Young. I know at L.W. Young, at C.C. Sweeting, we had homeroom teachers who actually got on their phones at home at night and called every parents. Please come and collect your child's report card. And while I'm speaking, I want parents to understand, and the wider public, I guess, that the quality of education in our public schools
It's better.
is
far
not
better.
given the credit that it
It's
deserves.
far better.
I want you to know that. I have a daughter who's a doctor today, who is a product of the public school system. She went from high school at C.C. Sweeting to being a doctor today. And I'm proud to say she didn't cost me one penny. She's a doctor, MD, not one penny. But what the Ministry of Education has fallen down on is publicizing that. We have a lot of students coming to the public school system
That are successful.
who are successful today, but it's not getting out there.
but gentlemen, there's another deficiency by the educational system.
Godfrey, I don't want to cut you off again, but I want to stick on this point about the difference between private education and public education.
Only one difference.
What is
Somebody paying for it and somebody ain't necessarily paying for it.
And the parental involvement.
Equality.
No, but
Here,
see,
here
this-
here it is.
No, but this is the question I'm about to raise.
No, let me finish this point. Here it is. If you check the qualifications of teachers in the public school and those in the private school, we have the better teachers in the public schools.
Yeah, but
Okay?
you see-
That's proven. The statistics will show that. The difference is, and as I said earlier, the parents pay twice because they pay through their taxes, through subvention, plus they pay a school fee. So the parents tend to take more interest and you see more parental involvement. If we could get that parental involvement that's in the private school, we'll take the roof off
Yeah, but
with
gentlemen,
our students.
gentlemen, you all got a big deficiency. A big deficiency, all right? You don't know who in school. There's no truant officer, right? There's no mandatory attendance. You don't
Yes,
know
there
what.
is.
No,
Yes,
no.
there is.
Teachers have told us on this program, right, that you don't have no attendance record. There's no truant officer.
That is not so. That is
You're
not
going to have
so.
a teacher come in the
No,
morning.
that's not
Right?
so.
The big bad
That's
That's
not
what they
so.
said on the
No,
program.
no, but that's not so. That
No
is not so.
attendance officers.
Let me discredit that.
Wait.
Let me
Do you have attendance officers?
Yes, we have.
we
We
do,
have a
sir.
division that's headed by
got- you
Alonzo
got
Strong
truant
that
officers?
deals with
Is it-
attendance.
is it
They don't call
working?
them
Yes,
truant
it
officers,
is.
They call attendance officers.
It's attendance officers.
Yes.
And that department is working?
Yes, it
Functioning.
is.
Well, why do we
Not
see
as
so many,
populated as it
so many
needs to be.
children
On the road.
on our streets?
Yeah.
Variety of reasons.
Here is this, and we're seeking to address that this year. On any given day, a school can close for whatever reason, staff meetings or whatever. So you do not know that school A is closed. So what we seek to do this year
understand.
is, let me finish, is to standardize that. To standardize that. And not only we can tell you which students are absent, the police pass these students every day too. We're all accountable.
Ms. Anderson, I see children sauntering to school
10
10
o'clock
o'clock in the morning.
This is why
11
parental
o'clock
involvement is
in
so
the morning.
critical.
Exactly.
You know, what are the penalties? Why should you have scores of children who catching the bus at 10 o'clock going to school, or walking our streets 10, 11 o'clock going to school?
I agree with you, and that
So
should.
that department is not working.
Oh, no.
It's not as working as best as it can, and there are a number of reasons why. Personnel, there's a shortage in personnel within that division.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons.
Okay. All right. Let's take this final break here on our program, and we hope we can engage a principal on the program. We take this break, and we'll come right back.